We've gone through Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And the Scooby-Doo show, and now it's time for the new iteration of the show, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. This, of course, is the third show in the Scooby-Doo franchise, and things have gotten to a point where we already know what the deal is without being introduced to it. So let's get to talking about the characters and then the show itself as a whole. First up, we have Fred, who is the leader of the group. He's his usual self in the show, albeit has less screen time and is explored less than before. He still drives the mystery machine and comes up with the traps and everything. Then we have Daphne, the redhead, my kind of woman. She's also in the show. She doesn't really do much in the show as usual and is always with Fred. The show has them closer together than before, but even then it's still not explicit that there's anything going on between them. Then there's Velma, the smart one of the group. I think she got a different voice actress halfway through the show because her voice changed. It was similar to before, but it definitely changed. Upon further reading, I found out that it's true. Pat Stevens was replaced by Marla Frumkin in voicing Velma. Heck, in the episode where she was recast, Velma only had one line. Seriously, yo. She's also in the show and is actually given more screen time than in the previous show, but it is still relatively little compared to her overall screen time in the franchise so far. Then there's Shaggy, the guy everyone likes, who is said to be constantly high and is a coward. He's the tallest of the group and is the one who owns Scooby Doo by the looks of it. By extension, he owns Scrappy-Doo too. He still maintains the same characteristics as before, and whenever the group splits up, he ends up taking both dogs. I still don't understand why one of the dogs doesn't go with Fred, but whatever. We have Scooby-Doo, one of the title characters. He is the Great Dane that likes to laugh, is scared of a lot of things despite always seeing that they are just normal people in disguise all the time, and loves food. He loves ripping Shaggy off too, always taking food from him in sneaky ways. We're used to it at this point. I don't know how Shaggy isn't, but whatever. The real deal is Scrappy Doo. He's a puppy and is always ready for a fight. Yep, that's right. This time we don't have all members of the group running away from danger, or some running and others thinking up a plan, or some running while others think up a plan and others are too stupid to be scared. This time we have a guy who is always ready to fight off the bad guys. That's where his name comes from, isn't it? He's always looking for a scrap. When I was a kid, I'd always get annoyed at how Shaggy and Scooby would always carry him away from the enemy. Like, yo, let him fight. He's gonna get things done for you. I hear fans didn't like him very much. I don't know why. He's not a bad character. Was it the voice? Was it the tough guy thing? I don't know. He is also the first character in the franchise's release order to have his past explored or at least explained. He grew up in the streets of New York, or he was in the streets for a little while since, he's still a puppy. So we can't say that he grew up in the streets? I bet you didn't know that, huh? Yeah, it's some nice insight. Well, we know the characters, let's talk about the show. You may have realized that the descriptions of the characters aren't very long. Well, that ties to the way the show treated them. The other characters weren't very prominent in the show. Scrappy took up a lot of the spotlight. Fred, Velma, and Daphne barely contributed to the show. Most of the dialogue was Scooby, Scrappy, and Shaggy. Heck, you can even count the number of times Fred and the girls interacted with Scrappy. They were really just background characters. The show was stuffed with too many characters and didn't really know where to go with them. The animation quality also went down, and the show was no longer scary, it became more of an adventure. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but the initial appeal was that the villains were scary, but now they're just like super villains. You can see that the way it was written was like, you already know what it is. We don't have to go back to the basics with you. This is a world you've been to before. While that is smart, it is better to just get on with it instead of pretending that the audience doesn't know anything, even though this is the third iteration of the franchise. But then again, I don't think they handled it with the finesse needed to make it as good as it could have been. We get it. These shows don't have that much lore. They're just kind of there and are meant to entertain children. Children don't really ask many questions about lore and backstories and all. And in the case that they do, it's only when they feel really intrigued by a certain aspect or character of the show. But then again, how often does that happen in a show with no real continuity? It's just self contained adventures. The show only went on for 16 episodes. I think this was at about the time that Hanna-Barbera had a very fixed formula that didn't really change, because this is not the first show from that era that we're talking about. That was 16 episodes. I also never got why it is different from the other Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. Both shows have the same name, and the other one started in 1982. I don't get why they couldn't just make it a continuation. Weird stuff, but then again, we take what we can get. This was also the last Hanna-Barbera cartoon to use the studio's laugh track. Funny, I didn't think about the laugh track in the show. It feels weird, but now that I think about it, there was a laugh track. This laugh track thing excluded primetime specials. Those still had laugh tracks for a while. The show came about because the previous show was declining in terms of ratings and there was a huge overhaul. They decided to bring in a new character and change the dynamic up a little bit, which resulted in the introduction of Scrappy-Doo. Some staff members left to work on other projects, which is why when you look at this show, it was different from the previous ones. Man, I'm glad I get to do this kind of research on my childhood shows. It really excites me. Anyway, the characters of Fred, Daphne, and Velma became so relevant that even in the 16th episode, they were just around for the first couple of minutes before it became about Scrappy and his puppy friends trying to save Shaggy and Scooby. Apparently, this was conceived as a sort of backdoor pilot for the next iteration. That's really messy, man. I mean, couldn't you all just give it time to figure out what to do and get a winning formula? Sure, it was hard, but the type schedules are schedules that you create. I'm sure there could have been time, but whatever. I wasn't even born back then, so there's no use in me complaining about anything. It's also worth noting that when Scooby Doo was originally conceived, he was supposed to be a small, feisty dog, but then that went to Scrappy in this show, and Scooby became what we know him as. I love history. Anyway, time to stop reminiscing and get to the present, or a more recent past. My favorite episode is the last one, the one where we met Scrappy's friends. It was a nice treat. My favorite villain, though, was the star creature dude. That was something. It was creepy in a weird way, not in a scary way. I didn't have a favorite character in the show. Well, that's all I can say about Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. If you have anything to say about the show or some insight for us, leave it in the comment section below. Please follow our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and subscribe to our channel. I guess I forgot to mention that in the last video, huh? Or was it all part of the grand design? I guess you'll never know. Just like what the plan is with the Star Wars universe. It's like poetry. It rhymes. Have a good day.